first topic that we're going to discuss is breaking the burnout cycle. So what we're trying to showcase in this article are some CEO success strategies about breaking that burnout cycle, and what to do when burnout and complacency set in and things along those lines.
Yeah,
So to jump right in, we hear that term all the time, burnout, but can you define what burnout means in your own words?
it's interesting you mentioned this. I just put out a short 3-minute video on
Oh,
LinkedIn
cool.
about wearing too many hats. And
Oh yeah, I
it's,
watched that.
yeah, and so that was along the lines of burnout in this respect. That I
Hmm.
find when people are running where CEOs are running their businesses, that they get caught up in a um, cycle of being the person everybody comes to for answers,
Hmm.
or being the person that wants to just get things done instead of having the patience or taking the time to develop the processes and to really make sure we've got right people in the right seats, and to train people how to be great problem solvers. And so
Yeah.
when those things are missing, what you end up with is a CEO that's the bottleneck in the business. And typically when you're and it doesn't have to be just the CEO, right? It could be the COO. It could be one of your directors and managers, VPs, that is either taking the path of least resistance, right? Or maybe the business is just growing fast, and there's a tendency to want to just throw answers at questions, or throw expedient solutions at problems, but they'll keep coming back up again, right? So we have to work to train our people to be scalable, and
Yeah.
it takes patience to do it, right? And I think that that's probably one of the key success factors that's often missing. And in a lot of those cases, you end up with people that are burnt out because they've just been, I mean, bottleneck is the best way to put it. They're the person that everybody comes to for the answers, but what they don't recognize is they're creating inefficiencies in their own business. They're limiting their growth.
Absolutely. No, it's such a great
Or maybe
point.
they
And
realize it, but they're not sure how to get out of the cycle.
yep,
And that's how I
absolutely.
help a lot of the people that I work with to recognize and to get out of that cycle.
Yeah, no, a great point. And can you go into a little bit about, why do CEOs experience burnout? What I guess kind of what role do you think that factors like stress, long hours, the lack of work-life balance or support, you know,
Yeah,
um, how do those factors play into burnout?
yeah, that's a great point, because I think it's a vicious cycle, right? You put in too much time. I mean, I call it the pillow test. What's keeping you up at night, right? And a
Yeah.
lot of times it's the brain just cycling on all of the information and activity that you've been
Mm,
through on a daily basis, because you're not giving yourself a break. You're not giving yourself any downtime. And look, I've been guilty of this too. I mean, oftentimes in my COO roles, I'd start at 6:30 in the morning, and I wouldn't finish till 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night, sometimes even later. And
yeah.
I would experience this where, like, I call it staring at the fire. I'd just be sitting there, maybe my wife and I poured a glass of wine, and I'm just staring at the fire. She goes, "Are you okay?" Like, I'm numb. I can't even think right now. I just need to sit here. That's called burnout. And I
Yeah,
think it's a vicious cycle. I
absolutely.
think you lose sleep. Um, and every day you go in and it's something new. Somebody's asking for something. They need, problem solved. They need, somebody wants a raise. And, you're trying to put numbers together, and you're trying to, make sure that everybody's doing the stuff that they're supposed to be doing. A lot of times it's a lack of structure that results in those types of things happening that lead to burnout. But you know, structure, it's become really popular to look at operating systems like EOS or Pinnacle Business Guides or something like that. And I've implemented that at 3 different companies where I was the GM or COO, and I will tell you that it uh, is incredibly effective in helping to create the lanes so that the CEO and the founder and the owner is not doing everything. It also helps people to recognize the seats that they need that they might not have right now, but it makes it, it creates a way for there to be a lot of visibility in terms of what needs to get done and what's getting done, so that there's the CEO or the founder or the owner is not left wondering,
Yeah.
and which oftentimes creates frustration, gets them involved in the business in ways that they really don't need to be. And so it begins to create that ability to have some downtime.
No, it's a great point. In the EOS point, we have talked to a number of different EOS implementers, and we've read traction, and we're looking at potentially using it for ourselves too. So we love EOS. But yeah, thanks for that point too. And for you personally, I know you talked a little bit about sitting on the couch and just kind of zoning out. But how was your experience with burnout, as a leader, or even as like a mentor or coach? Did you ever feel as though you were really on that cusp of like throwing in the towel, like having that much of burnout?
Yeah, I mean, not for me, I really didn't experience like throwing in the towel, but I have talked with and worked with CEOs that are thinking maybe I should just sell the company. And I've often said to them, well, it might be too soon. Maybe there's something else operating here that we need to talk about, right? What is it that you really want? And what I often hear is, but I really need a break. Yeah, I just need to be able to take some time. And so we work on figuring out how to create that time. One of the things that I've applied both for myself and my own discipline in terms of doing work, and that I help others try to apply as they're working, is to really decide on the highest priorities. And it helps to work with, for me, I love figuring things out like that collaboratively, right? Collective wisdom, I call it, versus sitting in an office trying to figure that out for yourself, right? Of course, OS operating systems help out with that quite a bit too, because then you're working with a team and everyone's deciding on what the priorities are of the business. But there are, I've often come into situations where I see a long list. Show me what you're working on right now. And I see a long list. And I go, wow. I mean, will you ever get to the end of it? And how does that feel? Right?
Yeah.
Is the list running you, or are you checking off the list? Right. And so what I encourage people to do as I go through these lists with them is let's figure out the things that are going to have the biggest impact on your business over the next 60 to 90 days, and just focus on those, because a lot of the things on the list will take care of themselves or could be delegated to someone else.
Sure. Yeah. And when you're working with those folks in a capacity of being a coach and a mentor, and they're starting to experience burnout, what are some of the symptoms that you're on the lookout for? Maybe they don't know that they're experiencing some of these symptoms of burnout, but what is that when you see it in someone else? Like, how do you notice it?
So stress will oftentimes show up as anger or frustration over something that is really insignificant. Right.
Yeah.
So just think about yourself getting in your car, and you're not thinking of this. It's operating in your, sort of unconsciously, but you're trying to get onto the highway, and the guy's, in the lane next to you is not letting you merge or something like that. And, you get frustrated and angry, and maybe, say something that's probably not appropriate. That's not PG. And that, to me is a warning sign, right? Like, why am I getting so frustrated about this? Well, it's probably because you got some stuff operating in your life that's creating stress, and that, if I see it in the workplace, it's, it how I would work with my CEOs is a lot of times just sit down and say, we've got a same page meeting. I'll just say, hey, let me bring you up to speed. So I'm managing up a little bit. Let me bring you up to speed on some of the things we're working on in the organization, and then tell me what's keeping you up at night, or what's going on with you, or what are some of the opportunities you'd like to process. And but oftentimes what I would hear is, I just don't understand why, or I'm so frustrated with.
Mhm.
And that to me was, would be a sign that maybe we need to talk about recenter ourselves on what's important, recenter
Mhm.
ourselves on, what it is that that's important for you to be responsible for, and how it's important for you to recognize the value that your people are bringing. And maybe we need to develop higher levels of trust in what's going on in the organization. How do we do that? And so, to answer your question, I think you see those cracks in the armor when there's frustration or anger around things that probably shouldn't be creating frustration and anger. And then we got to take a look at what's the underlying cause, what's the root cause,
Yeah.
and work in a way that doesn't create that kind of stress. Or maybe that kind of stress is just part and parcel of, running and growing a business, but we have to go back and check in on that periodically.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you see the burnout affect like their personal life and their relationships? What does that look like?
So, I mean, I have a saying that was actually not mine originally. One of my coaches back in the day in Chicago said to me one time, he asked me a question about, we were talking about money, and he asked me a question about how that shows up in my family and in my conversations with my wife. And I
Yeah.
said to him, I go, Mark, what difference does it make? I'm here to solve a business problem. He goes, well, unless you're schizophrenic, you're the same person at the office as you are at home. And so if you're experiencing frustrations at the office, it's likely going to spill over into your
Mm.
home life. And if you're not sure about that, just ask your wife. She'll tell you.
She'll give it to you straight.
Right.
No, perfect. And then when you're talking with these folks and you're helping to kind of counsel members throughout these throughout their burnout, how do you counsel them to in I guess in like prevention strategies, in order to prevent getting to that point and really being affected by that burnout? What do you teach them, or how do you help them prevent that?
So I think first recognize that we're all prone to it, right? And if you could be proactive in terms of your strategies, I think that's a great idea. But I think uh, it's it's challenging to do that. Yeah, there's so many priorities, so many different um, areas of the business that you're looking at, or things that you're considering doing uh,
Hmm.
while you're growing the business. What needs to be done? So this is so typical. But the last thing that CEOs, founders, owners, executives, period, are doing is, how do I need to take care of myself? Right?
Hmm.
You always put yourself as the lowest priority, but in fact, you should be the highest priority, because as the head goes, so goes the body. Right? So
Yeah.
if you're healthy and positive, have a great mental state and frame of mind, right, you're in a much better position to be a great leader and manager for your
Hmm.
business.
Absolutely. No, that's an excellent point. And for individuals who are facing that impending burnout, how can they identify that root cause, of their frustrations?
Work with a coach.
Okay.
Work with somebody who can be a sounding board with you. Right? Work with somebody who's worked with people who have gone through this before and can help you to begin to recognize, as you dialogue about what's going on a day-to-day basis, both in your life and in your business.
Hmm.
And I think that's the best way to do it, really. Don't try if look, I'm going to tell people what to do, but if you try and do this on your own, right? There's an old saying that narcissists only see things from their own perspective, right? The truth of the matter is, and I've talked about this in one of my little clips on LinkedIn, which is you can't see yourself the way other people see you.
Yeah.
Think about it. And
Yeah.
so we need other people to reflect back to us what they're seeing and experiencing. We need other people to think through challenges like I'm feeling burnt out. I'm not sure how I got here.
Yeah.
I need a dialogue with someone about this and sort it out and put in place some strategies to stay ahead of this down the road.
Absolutely. And how can leaders, or how should leaders respond when they're experiencing that full-fledged burnout? You had made a comment earlier about how it tends to come out in, frustration or anger.
Yeah.
But how should they respond really when they start to experience this?
I always, well, my wife will help me with this when she starts to see it in me. And so I guess the advice is when you begin to recognize that I just got frustrated over something that should not create frustration for me. And I'm having an emotional reaction to something that like is insignificant. That should be a warning. Let that be a warning sign, right? And then recognize I need to take a deep breath. I need to look at, based on the strategies that I've put together, I need to look at what it might be that's really frustrating me, and then process the issue, right? I don't overlook that, and it's a great opportunity to say, hey, let's dive into this at the root cause so that it doesn't keep happening again.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great segue to my next question when it comes to like the issue processing. So in this in these situations where someone like a leader is experiencing this burnout, what role does support, or how important is support from peers and mentors to help them get through this?
It's critical, in my opinion. And I've been involved in peer groups. I've had mentors, I've had coaches, and I call them the footnotes in the most positive way, right? The people that have helped me to stay on track, that have helped me to learn and grow and become, a better version of myself, a better, more effective leader, are those peer groups, those mentors and coaches. And I think that we should not be without them when we're going through. Look, business is a crucible. I don't care what anybody says. It's not easy. And it will test you and trial you every step of the way. My son's doing a half an Ironman right now. He's got a coach to help him to understand how to train effectively, to help him how to think as he's in the race. And his brain is telling him to stop doing what he's doing. And so we should absolutely have that support structures in place when we're trying to grow a business.
Absolutely. No, that's an excellent point. And congratulations to your son for going through that. That's a huge accomplishment.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And then kind of flipping the switch a little bit. So how can leaders help to prevent or ease burnout amongst their own executive teams and beyond? So I guess just within their organization.
Enable them in the same way that they're enabling themselves, putting practices in place that help them to both recognize it and work to develop strategies to keep from having this be a reoccurring event, right? And if you've done this for yourself as a founder, CEO, or owner, then you've learned to recognize it in your people, and coach them in the same way that you've been coached. And that'd be, I'll tell you, very encouraging to the people that work with you to know that you're the type of person that cares that they are experiencing or potentially experiencing burnout and helping them in the same way
Yeah.
you've been helped.
Absolutely. No,
Pay
I
it
love
forward,
that.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Pay it
Yeah.
forward. Well, Michael, on that topic, those are all the prepared questions that I had for that specific topic. Before I move to the second one, is there any additional comments or anything that we didn't go over you wanted to touch on with burnout?
I think that was well covered. I appreciate
Okay.
your questions.
Yeah, absolutely.